Today I want to talk about figures in your painting. They come in all shapes and sizes. And no, I'm not talking about body shape, although that is true as well. We are going to discuss the relationship between the figures and the sceneries of your painting. And as a bonus, I will be sharing with you a quick demo on painting a small group of people in the distance and this painting that I painted recently. Hi, this is Eric from Cafe Watercolor. Not all scenery paintings need figures. When you paint a landscape painting with no human figure in it, it often feels more tranquility and calm, almost as if the time is frozen. And there are some sceneries really call for that. However, adding figures make the painting more alive and even can give the sense of movement. You might even feel more intimate with the painting. That's because you see another human being in it. All that being said, different sizes of figures can affect the look and feel of painting. You can often think of these figures as real people in the environment. How far and how close they are will make you feel different about a painting. So let's talk about 3 basic scale ranges to show you the difference. So the first one is small size figures. These are often 5 to 20% of the painting. They are often the minor shape of the painting. They usually won't change the overall shape of the painting, but they will make the painting look more exciting and alive. Think of yourself walking on the street, and suddenly you see people gathering at the place. Well, that will likely pique your interest, right? Same thing for the painting. When you have small figures in it, it will draw people closer to your painting and they want to look at the detail a little bit more. Since these figures are usually in the distance, they are smaller and encompassed by a larger environment. When you look at the painting, you are sharing the big environment with the figures, but you are not part of the action. This small figures doesn't require detail. You can check out one of my previous video on painting smaller figures in a painting, but as a bonus, let me show you how to easily paint a group of figures in a distance. Okay, so when it comes to painting multiple figures in a distance, what you need to understand is that there's not that much difference from painting a single figure. It's all about using different shapes and different visual language to interpret what you see. So the first thing you want to ask yourself is that when you look at a group of figures in the distance, what do you see the most? For me, it's the head and the body, unless you are looking at somewhere else, or if you're looking at the phone, that's a different thing. But most of the time, if you're looking at people on the street, you look at their face, you look at their eyes. So the important part is the head and the body. So we'll start with a very loose drawing. I usually start with the body just because it has the largest part of a figure. And I keep my line loose and connected. So I draw 3 figures walking together and maybe another one on the side here so that they single out. So we have a larger shape and a smaller shape. And I mentioned it before, if you are on the same level of heightness of most of the figure that you see, you all share the same eye level. Unless someone is very tall or someone is really short, like a child. Most of the people share the same eye level. Now I draw another figure in the distance. Same eye level, just a little bit smaller. Now I draw some smaller rectangular shape on top of the body. Those will be the heads. I usually like to keep them a little bit more rectangular and angular instead of just round and oval. I feel like round head looks a little bit cartoonish and an angular shape head feels a little bit more graphical, just something that I prefer. Now I start to loosely indicate the leg. Now you don't have to draw every single leg out, just some of them, a little bit of indication, and it will send the message across. And the arm and the hand as well, you don't have to paint every single one of them. So now I start painting. So since this is a very quick demo, I'm not going to do too much color. Here is a big shape connecting all 3 figures together. Then the figure in the middle who is singled out, I will give that person a yellow shirt. And the person on the right, I'll give it a little bit of green tint to the shirt. So here we're already done with the body. Now we need to put the head on the body. So I usually use orange with a little bit of red for the skin tone. And I just paint those in. And you can have that connect to the body and it will blend in a little bit, which is fine for me. That's what watercolor is about. And now I mix a little bit stronger color. And I'm going to start painting the legs. And again, keep the leg very loose. If you paint the leg a little bit looser, it will feel like they are walking. Don't just paint two perfectly straight lines. It will look like the person is very stiff. And keep your brushstroke minimum. And see, I just did that real quick. And have the leg a little bit tilted and one leg forward, one leg back, the back leg a little bit shorter. It's all about visual language. And the one on the right, I do the same thing. And for this one, perhaps she is wearing a skirt, so I will paint a full shape instead of two separate legs. And now you can add the arm and the hand. Again, you don't have to do every single one of them. Don't start counting and calculate how many limbs you need to paint. I'm horrible at math, so I'm happy that I don't have to do that. And it works, even though I'm only painting two arms. The guy in the yellow, it can feel like the hands are on the back or in the pocket. That's totally fine. And now I'm painting some cast shadow. Have them connected to the shape is totally fine. And now it feels like there is a sense of lighting. And now after the wash on the face is dry, I can do the hair. If I do that right after I painted the head, it's going to blend in and the face is going to look dirty. Just a small brush stroke and that will do. And there you have it, some simple figures in the distance. And on its own, it can look a little bit flat. So you can actually mix some darker colors and give it some sense of lighting. So I added a little bit of darker colors on the left since the light is coming from the right, the imaginary light. So the photos on the right is really just for reference. I am not really painting that photo. It's just a quick reference of people's gesture and stuff. So here is also another darker shape. Here, over there as well. So you can actually feel a little bit of volume so the person don't look flat. And make the leg, the front leg to be exact, a little bit darker, just to push the depths a little bit. So there you have it. You have a group of figures in a distance. Really not that difficult. And especially when it's in a distance, it's not a huge part of the painting. More likely is part of a bigger shape of your painting. So if you have a tall skyscraper there and some figures in the front, they are mostly part of the same shape. You can just have a little bit of highlights and gap, and you can paint some of the shape a little bit darker. And just by doing this, you immediately can feel like there are figures in front of the background skyscraper. And it's as simple as that. Don't overthink it. They are all just shapes. And what you need to do is to separate them by using values and colors. Don't try to separate every single figure that you see. You don't see that in real life anyways. Figures overlap and they are close to each other sometimes. Just focusing on the essential shape of body, head, and a little hint of the legs and arms. And that's all you really need. Even the arm is not essential sometimes, like the figures in the middle and in the right. I just paint a little hint of that. So these figures usually don't change the overall shape of the painting. So focusing on the big shape and just a tiny little bit of detail to suggest that they are figures. Okay, that's it for a very short demo. I hope this is helpful for you. Hope that little demo is helpful for you. Now let's talk about medium-sized figures. These usually take up to 30 to 50% of the space in a painting. This is what I consider an awkward distance. Not because you cannot paint it, I paint that a few times myself, including the painting I'm going to share with you today, But the tricky part is to paint just enough detail to the figure without looking too cramped in real life. If you see someone at this distance, most likely they are going to notice you as well. But depending on your relationship with that individual or group of people, there may or may not be an interaction. Now that I'm working full-time at home, my family is the people I see the most during the day. Nothing awkward about that. I mean, my teenage kid is in that awkward stage, but it's not about that. However, back when I still needed to go to the office to work, there were countless times I was at that semi-close distance with a colleague that I didn't know. We acknowledge each other's presence, but we don't interact with each other. And as an introvert, I need to spend extra energy just to say hi. And I usually end up just smiling and nod. Like that. Just to show that, hey, I see you, I am not ignoring you, I'm friendly, but I am not socially ready to engage. Okay, I know I gone off the tangent on this, but all I'm trying to say is that this type of figure in painting is tricky to do. But if done right, it can be very interesting and engaging to look at. You usually want to paint a figure at this size if you want to focus on a person and what they do in a painting. So the figure just standing still in that distance will look pretty awkward. Lastly, a closed-up portrait. This is over 50% of the painting and I count that as a portrait. It can be a full figure if you want to capture an action, but more often I will paint the head down to the chest area. This is much closer experience with the subject. You usually won't be so close to a person unless you want to interact with them, unless you're crammed in a very crowded area like a subway or something. I did many portrait paintings before, so feel free to go back to watch any of these videos. It's a much more intimate painting about the subject. Rather than simply capturing the moment or place, this is to celebrate an individual and make that person special. So if someone painted you like this before, it means that you are special in some way. It doesn't have to be romantic, I don't want to freak you out, but there is an artwork made after you and that makes you special. Okay, I hope breaking this down is helpful for you and will help you to choose the right approach when including figures in your paintings. And as a bonus, I want to share with you the process of this painting. This is my wife enjoying a sunny spring morning the other day. She was sitting outside of her library waiting for me. I took a photo of her before I walked up close to her. I love the lighting and of course the person in it. It is considered a medium-sized figure in a painting for me, so it's a bit tricky to paint, which is why I want to share with you the process of this. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so let's take a look at this painting. So first of all, I do a very loose drawing and I'm not worrying about a lot of details. I just need to block out the shape, make sure it's in good composition. Usually for a painting like this, you don't want the figure to be right in the center unless that's what you're going for with your composition. Usually a little bit off to the side, and in this case, she is facing left. So I want to leave a little bit more space so that it feels like she's looking out in the open space. And I also changed that statue thingy into a car because even though that's a very interesting statue, the rocks with some crow ravens on top is really cool looking, but I feel like it's going to be a distraction for this painting, so I changed that into a distant car. So exercise your creative license and change things in your painting to fit your composition need. So only when I started to do the drawing, I realized how heavy the perspective is in this picture. I was really focusing on my wife. I didn't realize the surroundings actually a little bit of perspective nightmare. Not because it's really complicated, but there are quite a bit of details like the brick wall, the window, and the floor tile are all following the perspective, and I need to make it look decent enough so that it doesn't distract the viewer. Anyways, I start to focusing on my wife a little bit, trying to do a little bit more detailed drawing. This part is not sped up so you can see how fast or how slow I'm actually drawing her. So as you can see, despite that I am aiming for a loose looking painting and drawing doesn't mean that I draw everything really fast. It's just that I try to think more before I put down my line and brushstroke. And I also try not to break the line as much as possible. Try to keep that line flow going. It's very similar to how you want to connect the shape when you are painting. You should establish that habit when you are drawing. Finishing up the leg of my wife, I unintentionally makes her leg longer. But generally, if you make a person taller, make their leg longer, the proportion looks really pleasant. Most of the people won't mind. Every time after I paint my wife, she see the painting, she always asks, do I really look that pretty? And I always feel like she meant that as a compliment, but I always reply her, this is what you look like in my heart, so hopefully that's a good answer. Okay, back to the drawing. Drawing out her nose. And since she's looking out, I don't really need to draw her facial feature, which is good. I feel like when it comes to this size of figure in the painting, the less detail you can get away with, the better, as opposed to draw too much, because you will compress too many details in a smaller area, and that's not going to make it look good. It will actually make it look too busy. So I clean my palette and I'm going to start my first wash by painting the color of the light. So taking a big brush, pre-wet some of the areas, and start painting the color of the light and atmosphere. So starting with the sky, leave out a little bit of cloud, and I paint the color of cherry blossom tree. And do a little bit of wet onto wet just to give it a bit of variety. And I continue to the right, the light part of the building, also give it some reflection of the sky on those windows. The color will blend with each other, they will spread out, totally fine. Just focusing on painting a nice clean wash. That's why I use a bigger brush, because bigger brush gives you a much easier time to paint a big area. It holds a lot more water and paint, so you don't have to continuously go back to your palette and reload your brush. Now I switch to a smaller brush for some wet onto wet work. Get a little bit of the different colors on the concrete tile, and also the light on her denim jacket. And I go ahead and paint the light of her face, so it's a skin tone. Continue that on to paint the color of the brick wall. Change to a smaller brush again. And finishing up the wash and paint some soft details on the brick wall. So I will mix a slightly darker, more intense color and do a little bit of wet onto wet on the brick wall. I like to do that wet onto wet so the shape is going to be a bit softer, so it will be more like a texture on the wall instead of really painting individual brick. So you can already see a little bit of discoloration on the brick wall. I use a little bit of darker, cooler color, some warmer color. And I also use a clean brush and lift some of the paint while it is still wet. So that's how you get those lighter lines between the bricks. Keep adding different color variation while it is still moist. I try to utilize this time as much as possible when I'm painting now, just so that I don't have to go back and re-wet the paper. This stage of a watercolor painting is often the most challenging stage. It's almost like a mind game, because right now there's really just not that much going on in the painting. You just see a bunch of flat colors, and it's really hard for you to believe that it's going to turn into something good. And even though I've done quite a bit of paintings already, it's still a challenging stage for me. I have to just keep going, believe in myself, and watercolor. This is why Joseph Spookfish always said, you need to have faith. Faith in watercolor, faith in yourself that this is going to turn into a good painting. If you don't believe that yourself, you are going to have a hard time to convince the viewer that it is a good painting. So now I'm starting to paint the middle value. And as I do that, you start to see the light coming out. And now I'm going to start painting the cast shadow of the tree and the building that are casted on the wall. And that's when the fun starting to happen, because you start to see the contrast. And with contrast and different lightings, you start to define the structure and the shape and form of the scenes in the painting. That's when the scene's starting to look three-dimensional. And also start to paint a little bit of the detail on the brick wall. And here is the cast shadow of the roof. You don't see the roof, but it's casting a nice big shadow on the wall. And that also really helps the overall shape of the painting, so the wall doesn't look that bland. And after I paint that big shape shadow, I usually like to go in and start to do a little bit of wet on to wet. That's something I like to do when I paint a big wash. I will go back in, do a little bit of wet on to wet, add some colors and value variations, just to make the shape look more interesting. And now I start to paint my wife, adding that middle value on her hair. In this part, I will show you a little bit of the real speed without speeding up. So as you can see, I'm being quite careful on painting a good shape. Also start to mix a little bit of darker blue to paint a middle value on her jacket, start to define the structure of her jacket. Each brushstroke is a chance for you to interpret the structure, so don't waste any brushstroke. Think twice before you put down the brushstroke. Continue and connect the shape. The shape at the end might look simple because I connect a lot of them together, but there is a lot of thinking behind each brushstroke. And to me, that's how you make a loose painting, is to paint the right shape at the right place with the right value. It takes practice and it takes good observation and also a lot of failed paintings, which I have a lot of failed paintings. And I'm not immune to failures. One thing that I do with my Patreon group is that I give a weekly live demo. Sometimes those demos didn't work out that well, and I have to live with that, especially with all of the students looking at it. So don't be afraid to fail. Even masters still do bad paintings. And now I am mixing some warmer color. Everything looks really cool on her right now. Her hair has this really beautiful warm glow when it's lit by the sun, so I want to paint that in. Again, just a small shape is connected with rest of the middle value shape. But that little color variety is just going to make the painting feel much more alive. And I continue on painting the middle value on her face, something a bit darker and warmer underneath the nose, side of her cheek, and underneath the chin. Those are very tiny shape and detail, but with just a little bit of hint, it's going to make it look much more dimensional and alive. Few simple brushstrokes to paint her hands. I'm grateful that she's putting her hands together and it's mostly covered by her legs, so I don't have to paint any finger. And as we zoom back out, you can start to see she is taking form. You can feel the light on her. And that's when the painting's starting to get excited. So that's why when you are working on the boring stage, just right after the first wash, just continue with the plan. And if you have a solid plan, you can see the progression of your painting very fast. So I did a wash on her legs. She's wearing a black legging, so we'll come back later and add some more dark. It's pretty similar value to her hair, which is dark value. We'll come back to that later. But you can already starting to see the form, the contrast is taking shape. Bit of detail on her shoes. Right now I'm using a synthetic nylon hair brush. The hair is really snappy and it has a very beautiful point, so it allowed me to get into the smaller shape, paint some details. So just a little bit of sneak peek, this is actually a custom brush. I'm working with a brush manufacturer to come out with my own brush set. I will talk a lot more about it when it is available, so stay tuned on that. And now I'm painting the cast shadow. So now I'm painting her cast shadow on the bench and the brick wall. It's important to connect the middle value shape on her to the cast shadow just to make it look more unified. It will look cleaner and more atmospheric. And also pay attention to where the cast shadow is casting on. So her cast shadow is casting on the bench and it goes up to the brick wall. And if you pay attention to those shapes and you paint those out, you can really make things look three-dimensional and solid. Adding some more dark underneath the bench. We'll make the bench pops out. And I'm starting to paint the cast shadow across the floor. This cast shadow is casted by a tree on the left side of the frame. We don't see it, but we see the cast shadow. It's great because that connects to our figure and that creates a very nice, interesting middle value shape. We continue to add more shadows in the background. And also the cast shadow in the front. That cast shadow cuts across the floor and also casted on the bench. So by adding this middle value shape, we start to see light and dark, and you see so much more definition throughout the whole painting. And this started to get me really excited for me to continue to paint. Now I'm starting to paint the background car. Keeping it simple and again try to connect as much shape as possible. The tail light and the back of the car connect to the wheel. The wheel connects to the cast shadow and so on. Our main focus should be the figure, so don't put too much detail in the background. It just needs to be enough for it to convey the environment. So all these cars in the background, it is a parking lot, so there's quite a bit of cars. I just paint some very simple, almost abstract shapes. And because I already painted a car in the front, the viewers are going to take the clue and complete the painting themselves. So you don't have to explain everything. I'm doing some wet onto wet on the cherry blossom tree. It is a warm spring morning. The cherry blossom tree was blooming. It's really, really beautiful. I want to capture that everyday beauty with this painting. And now I'm working at home full time. It's a lot easier for me to take my wife out for lunch, having a little bit of walk around the city, having that luxury to enjoy each other's company. I think it is very, very beautiful and I feel very blessed. That's the reason why I do this painting, and that's what I want to convey to the viewers as well. Adding some more shapes in the background. There's a lot of detail compressed in the background because a lot of things overlapping. So I just want to give it enough for the viewers to see, but try not to define everything. And now we go back to the figure and starting to paint some dark shapes. So specifically her hair, some part of her jacket, and her legging. Now we need to slow down a little bit and really be careful, try to preserve as much light as we can. We want to have that contrast, but we don't want to make everything dark. And now as you can see, as soon as I add the dark value, even the middle values start to feel light. It's important not to make the hair too complicated. You want a little bit of detail, but still treat it as a shape, as a group of shape together. And now you can see as I added some dark, her hair start to look shiny and more rich. And again, this part is not sped up, so you can see the speed that I'm painting this. Not fast at all because I am constantly thinking, making decisions for each brushstroke. And I'm starting to bring some dark value onto her jacket. Not everywhere, just some folds, some occluded areas. And now I'm moving down to the occluded shadow on her legging, and I'm going to start to paint the legging a lot darker. So in the photo, her legging is pretty much completely black, but in the painting, I actually want to give it just a bit sense of lighting. So I will preserve some light on top so that it feels like her legs is round, has some form to it. And I'm happy with that decision because her leg looks nice and solid. It doesn't feel like a flat shape. So any little hint of value change and form change can be helpful. A few details on her shoes. So the painting looks quite complete now, and that's because I have a full value range, not because I have a lot of details. And now I am going to connect the dark of her legging to the cast shadow. And the reason I do that is the shadow, especially the contact shadow where she is sitting on the bench, is a lot darker. And you want her to actually feel like she's sitting on the bench instead of floating on it. So again, observations, very, very important. Really observe how the lighting works in real life so that you understand why certain things look certain way in the photo. Instead of just trying to copy the photo, really understand what it is representing in the real life. And here I'm starting to add some more detail to the brick. And later on I realized I messed up a little bit for those brick details. They are not really following the perspective, so I go back in after I finish the painting and fix them a little bit. I just finished painting the figure, so I feel like my mind's starting to take a break, so I didn't think through when I'm doing the painting. That being said, here is the finished painting. I really like how it turns out, and I really enjoyed painting this one. This painting really reminded me of that beautiful morning I hang out with my wife. And again, a figure this scale is a little bit awkward to paint because you really need to pick and choose how much detail you want to put in to the figure. But when it works out, it can look very beautiful and almost intimate in a way. There's a lot more story in this painting. So I hope you like this demo as much as I enjoy painting it. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If this is your first time here at my channel, welcome. Consider like and subscribe and ring the notification bell for more. Please also check out my website, sign up for a free PDF guide and update. And if you're interested to see my painting demos in unedited, non-sped up format, check out my Patreon page. I'll put the link down below. This is Eric from Cafe Watercolor. Wish you have a wonderful day wherever you are. I'll see you next time.